Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. My name is Bill Horan, and today we're shining the spotlight on an amazing organization helping the homeless on Long Island. Joining us today is Greta Guarton, Executive Director of the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless. Welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. Greta, let's start right at the beginning. What is the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless?
Hi, Bill, and thanks for having me on. The Long Island Coalition for the Homeless is a primarily advocacy and direct services organization. We work with the homeless and at-risk in Nassau and Suffolk, and really we do a lot of work with all of the organizations and government entities that assist the homeless as well in Nassau and Suffolk counties.
Now, when did the Coalition for the Homeless get started?
We were actually founded in 1985. I'm sorry to say that there's still a need for the Coalition for the Homeless all of these years later. We started as primarily an advocacy organization for other nonprofits, and over the years we have really evolved into a strategic planning entity working with the agencies, and now, again, as I said, direct services, working with homeless and at-risk individuals and families.
Now, you use nice words like advocacy and strategic planning, but for myself and for our audience, what does that mean on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. It's easier to say that than explain a lot of what we do. But a tremendous amount of what we do is working with other organizations, and as I said, local government, figuring out how to address the needs of the homeless, and our focus is on ending homelessness in Nassau and Suffolk. So that includes developing affordable housing, making sure that programs are available for folks in need and folks with disabilities, targeting funds to serve the hardest to serve and most vulnerable Long Islanders. And then in terms of direct services, we actually have case management and housing services teams and outreach teams that specifically work with those very vulnerable individuals and families to get them into permanent affordable housing.
Now, Greta, when we first think of homelessness, at least the first thing comes to me, my mind, the picture, is a man or woman standing in a doorway in the city or an alleyway. I guess that's the image we're conveyed by TV. But how would you define homelessness, and how extensive is it here on Long Island?
So, Bill, the folks that you would see in those doorways are included among the homeless population in Nassau or Suffolk. Those that are in Nassau or Suffolk that are living in outside or in unsheltered conditions. But the vast majority of homeless Long Islanders actually are living in emergency shelters. So homelessness by HUD is defined as living in an emergency shelter, transitional housing for the homeless, or a place not meant for human habitation. That would include the street. As I said, the vast majority of homeless individuals and families in Nassau and Suffolk are, in fact, living in emergency shelters. On any given night, it's a little under 4,000, and about 70% of them are members of families, and about 50% of them are age 24 and below.
Now, there's so many interesting things there, because basically if I was talking to someone and they would say, oh, I drive around at night and there's no homeless on Long Island. Now, you just educated me very well there, but because we probably wouldn't see them in the street, right? Right.
I mean, it's a very small percentage that are actually living on the street. Most are in shelters. And aside from some congregate shelters, which are fairly large facilities, in many cases you wouldn't even know that there's an emergency shelter on your block. Very often, many of the shelters they're single-family homes. You know, they look like pretty much any other home on the block. They tend to be larger homes. But they are shared amongst a number of individuals, or in some cases a number of families, where there's one family per bedroom. A large family might have two bedrooms, but there's multiple families in one single family home. There are 24-hour staff working there with those families, but they for the most part, they look like every other house on the block. They blend into the community. It is not obvious to folks that those homes are where homeless individuals or families live, and because you're not seeing them on the street, there's no way to necessarily identify them as homeless. Homeless families don't look any different from non-homeless families. When homeless kids are in school, they don't look any different from kids that are not homeless that are in school. They are poorer. They tend to be poorer. That is the number one reason for homelessness in Nassau and Suffolk is poverty and the lack of affordable housing. But there's plenty of people that are living in poverty and that are poor that are not homeless.
Now, can you tell us, Greta, Nassau and Suffolk County, I almost feel funny saying this, like who leads the league in homeless people, but are they basically balanced, or does it depend, like is it always 1% of the population or 1/10 of the percent, or does it just go all over the place in terms of percentages and numbers by county?
So there's about approximately 2 times the number of homeless folks in Suffolk as Nassau. That is shifting. The numbers in Nassau are going up, and the numbers in Suffolk are going down. Historically, the numbers have been higher in Suffolk for many years. Again, that is shifting. I can't really give you a lot of explanation or reason for that. In large part, we suspect that the cost of housing has been less expensive in Suffolk. There had been more opportunity to build, including shelters and permanent supportive housing programs for providers. It's been easier for them to build in Suffolk. In Nassau, however, part of the reason that the numbers are going up is that housing in general is more expensive, and it is harder and harder for folks to afford housing in Nassau County.
Greta, I'd like just to take a brief time now to let our audience know, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, and today we're talking about the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless with their executive director, Greta Guarton. Greta, what do you think is the number one reason for homelessness on Long Island?
That's very simple. The number one reason for homelessness in Nassau and Suffolk counties is the lack of affordable housing. The vast majority, as I mentioned earlier, of folks who are homeless in Nassau and Suffolk are members of families. Many of them do not have disabilities, or they have slight disabilities. And the bottom line is that they cannot earn enough to be able to afford rents on Long Island. There are, among the single adult population, there are more folks with disabilities, and again, there's very few programs and very few housing opportunities that are affordable for them as well, and that also leads to homelessness for that population.
Now, that's very sad because, I guess a lot of times we think, those people just didn't balance their checkbook or they squandered their income, etc. But I would guess just at a minimum on Long Island, I mean, so many prices are ridiculous of anything we're paying for. I think we would scare other states if someone comes here. Can you give us kind of a viewpoint of that, money-wise?
There's, when you consider it, I unfortunately don't have the statistic in front of me, but I believe it's over 50% of families that are in emergency shelters actually have at least one member that is working. We have, in terms of poverty, we have many people that are living just at the poverty line, and again working full time or close to full time. The challenge there is not that they're not able or willing to work. It is that they are not able to earn the wages necessary to be able to afford housing in Nassau or Suffolk counties. There's national statistics that show, and actually almost every place in the country, most people at the minimum wage have to work 60 to 80 hours just to be able to afford an average 2-bedroom apartment in their communities. Again, this is one of the most expensive places to live. It is one of the highest income areas in the entire country, And we tend to forget that there are people who are not those super high wage earners, and yet they're living here. Many of the folks that we're talking about that are in the lower, paying jobs are ones that we depend on a regular basis, and we don't even think about it. There are folks that are working in retail. There are folks that are working in hospitals. They are certified nursing assistants. There are aides at schools, lunch aides, bus drivers at schools. There are folks that are part of really the central foundation of our society in many ways, and they can't earn enough to be able to actually live here.
Now, Greta, I think you have 3 plans that you go along with when you educate and advocate for the housing. I think it's called emergency housing, transitional, and permanent low cost. Could you explain to us the difference and where each one comes into play?
So, sure. So emergency housing is just that. It is intended to be a very short, the intention is that it be a very short, immediate housing opportunity for folks so that they do not end up living on the street. But it is a shelter. It is intended to only be long enough for folks to be able to get back on their feet and out of homelessness. Unfortunately, we have people that have been in emergency shelters for 4 years and more, especially families. And a lot of the reason for that is because they can't get out because there is nothing affordable for them. Transitional housing is more of a I'll call it. I don't want to call it rehab. It's more of a training, higher support level. It is intended again to be transitional, but it's an opportunity for folks to get a more amount of upfront supports to help them with things like gaining higher ability to employ higher opportunities for higher incomes, getting kinds of training or getting them into different types of support services, clinical services, so that they are able to be self-sustaining in the future. And then permanent housing or permanent supportive housing. Permanent supportive housing is exactly what it sounds like. It's a permanent or long-term housing opportunity. It includes subsidies for folks that are not, typically that are people that are disabled that are on a fixed income, and there are support services built in to help support those folks towards the highest level of independence that they can manage.
Now, once you get them into a house, are there other services that you provide for them or must provide or they need?
So it depends on the folks that we're talking about. But for permanent supportive housing, yes, there are support services built into those programs. Permanent supportive housing is specifically intended for individuals or families where at least one member has a disability that is sufficient for them to not be able to work or live independently. So the permanent supportive housing programs include a financial subsidy to help people be able to afford their rent. And then depending on the program, different types of support services, including case management, different types of counseling, linkages to a variety of support systems within the community.
Now, if there's something going on, I can get a letter in the mail saying, this is happening. Do you want to join? Do you want to come to a free seminar or something? But how do you reach out to the homeless because they don't have a home? That would seem to be an initial difficult problem.
So in terms of the work that the coalition does, we work very closely with the Departments of Social Services in both counties and the shelter providers that contract with them. Nassau and Suffolk authorize and contract all of the shelters in the 2 counties, and they are by and large run by primarily nonprofit organizations in each county. And we have strong working relationships with almost all of them. In addition to that, we have outreach teams that work directly with folks that are living on the street or in other places not meant for human habitation. They spend a lot of time developing relationships with those folks and gaining trust. There's a lot of folks that are living on the street. There's reasons that they've been there, that they're there, and a lot of it has to do with not having been able to succeed in traditional shelters or really being told about one kind of program or made promises about what programs can offer, and then finding that those programs do not, in fact, offer what they were told, and therefore kind of having a general mistrust of the system.
Greta, we want to find out more, but at this point in the show, it's time for a brief break. I'm Bill Horan. Today we're talking about the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless with their executive director, Greta Guarton. You're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
You remember the day you first laid eyes on her. They handed you the keys and you drove back home for everyone to admire. And although the memories have been made, it's time to pass the torch to someone else. This year, consider donating your vehicle to the National Federation of the Blind. Just call 866-282-7327. Or if you know a blind person who needs help, please email nfb@nfb.org.
My Hometown is made possible by Herald Community Newspapers. For more local news, visit liherald.com. Got a story to tell? Call 516-569-4000.
And now we return to My Hometown.
Thanks for being with us here today on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan, and today we're talking about the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless with their executive director, Greta Guarton. Greta, what events does the Long Island Coalition run in order to make people aware of this problem?
We offer a number of different programs. The most prominent related to awareness raising is something called our Candlelight Vigil for the Homeless. We hold it each spring. The Candlelight Vigil consists of a candlelight vigil to raise awareness, but we also have a variety of information and services that we provide to folks that are in need that attend our event. And that includes everything from information about support services and housing programs that exist to financial literacy assistance. We have things like free haircuts. We've also expanded it to include a health fair and health screenings for folks. It's completely free for everyone, and it is one of the opportunities that we have for folks who are in need and folks who care about homelessness to come together as one body and one voice and advocate for more programs and more funding to address the needs of the homeless in Nassau and Suffolk counties. We also have, through things like this, I speak out a lot to let people know about what's going on in Nassau and Suffolk counties. And we have an annual conference in the fall of each year that is specifically dedicated to addressing the needs of the homeless, including program development, and improving service provision. So we do have folks who are homeless who attend, but primarily it is for the community and for professionals that work with the homeless.
Now, Greta, you've really done a great job so far educating us, and we have a lot more questions for you, and we want to get a lot more information. But if someone who's listening says, gee, how could I get in touch with them? I'd like to help, etc. Where are you based, and is there an email or website that you can tell us about?
Yes, and we love volunteers. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities. We are located in Amityville, right on the border of Nassau and Suffolk counties. We have volunteer opportunities in our distribution center, which we call our boutique. It's a free distribution center of essential items. The distribution center is open on Mondays and Thursdays, and we have volunteers Mondays through Thursdays that assist in our warehouse. We also have a garden club that meets during the summer, during the spring, and through the fall. We're meeting right now. We meet on Wednesday afternoons from 4:30 to about 7. And we also have a number of weekend Saturday opportunities, both in our boutique and in our garden. The best way to get in touch with us or to find out more is through our website, which is www.addressthehomeless.org. If you are interested in anything related to the boutique, you could reach out to boutique@addressthehomeless.org. If you're interested in other volunteer opportunities, you would want to reach out to M. Lugo, that's M like Mary, Lugo, @addressthehomeless.org.
And again, we want to remind our audience, the person who's speaking is Greta Guarton. She's the executive director of the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless. Greta, I can think of nothing better that if high schoolers or college students are looking for a project, looking for something to get started in their careers, what an experience both to work with other people, to see maybe the other side of society and how lucky we are, they are, and what they could do for people, to give some time or perhaps work with you or volunteer as part of the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless. Now, we think of just homes, but and of course, I guess any group would be happy to have a donation. But is there anything else you need as a group that we might not think of, as the average lay people? But gee, if you had more of that, it would make life a lot easier for the homeless.
Yeah, I mean, aside from funding and housing, we do actually through our distribution center, and again, it's a free distribution center. We give out a lot of essential items, everything from toiletries, personal care items, small amounts of food, clothing. We're actually in the middle of our school supplies drive. Folks don't realize how much it costs to send kids back to school with all of the new school supplies that they need, and it's just not manageable for many of the homeless families or those that are in need, especially those that are desperately trying to make ends meet and be able to pay their rent so they don't end up homeless. So we are actually in the process of doing collections for those exact kinds of items. New school supplies, new backpacks. Our goal is to collect 5,000 so that we can distribute 5,000 to homeless and in need children in Nassau and Suffolk. Again, on our website, which is www.addressthehomeless.org, we have a list of drop-off locations if you'd like to donate towards that. And we're updating that list regularly. So keep checking back to see, when there's a drop-off location in your area. We also have a Facebook page that we update constantly, and it's another great opportunity to find out more about what we're doing, and that's the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless.
Now, Greta, at this point, we'd like to remind our audience that if you're just tuning in, you're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan, and today we're talking about the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless with their executive director, Greta Guarton. Greta's telling us how we can help out. How about around our house, if there's things that people need, and I'm just thinking through my garage, anything from tennis rackets that are sitting there, maybe a couple of chairs, a couch, something we're thinking of putting on the curb tonight, an old desk, a suit that no longer fits us. Maybe I'll put it nicely, outgrown it, gained a few pounds, etc. or a business outfit, dress, shoes, any of those things good, helpful?
So we do accept gently used clothing, new socks and underwear, but otherwise gently used clothing for men, women, and children. We do have a tremendous need for especially large sizes and business attire we always need. In terms of any kinds of housewares, we do assist folks that are moving back into permanent housing after having experienced homelessness. So things like sets of dishes or glasses or mugs, things like that. We can accept utensils, cooking, cooking equipment, pots and pans, things like that we can always use. We do not accept large furniture or large appliances. We don't have the capacity. But things like a small microwave or a toaster oven or a coffee maker we can accept. And, something like a very small bookshelf. If one person can carry it, we probably can accept it.
We seem to think or hear that there's a high number of veterans who are homeless. Is this the case, or is that just a perception?
There has been a large percentage of folks that were homeless that were veterans. There's been a tremendous push in the last several years to address that issue. And we have actually made tremendous strides in Nassau and Suffolk in reducing that number. In 2016, we were actually able to declare that we had effectively ended veteran homelessness. That doesn't mean that there's no homeless veterans or there never will be, but it does mean that we have services in place to assist homeless veterans in our region and to get them out of homelessness. There's always still a need, however, and one thing that we don't always think about is that there are more and more men and women coming home, and we have new crops of veterans all the time. So even though we have sufficient housing for the veterans that we have identified right now, that doesn't mean that that we will still have enough for any new veterans or veterans that might be here already but have not quite reached the point where they're homeless, and hopefully, there's services in place that can prevent that. But for some, we still will need to develop housing.
We all applaud when the veteran stands up at a baseball game or a basketball game or a hockey match. I think this is a great opportunity for people on Long Island, if they're listening to the show. Make your business a drop-off point. Maybe you can help out and just show that you care, or help do a little collection among your clients, patients, friends, and help some of these veterans, help the people who are homeless on Long Island, and maybe even be a block representative. You can talk to Greta about these things. I don't know if they have such a thing, but maybe you could go up and down your block. Just make people aware of this. If you could get 20 more people aware, what a great act to help somebody. It makes you feel good, and obviously you're doing something good not only for the veteran, but anybody who's perhaps homeless. Greta, once again, would you tell us, if someone wants to get involved, where do they contact you? Give us your base address and the email and a phone number, perhaps.
Sure. So our website address is www.addressthehomeless.org. We are located in Amityville at 600 Albany Avenue. Our phone number is 631-464-4314. If you'd like to volunteer in the boutique, you would get in touch with boutique@addressthehomeless.org for other volunteer opportunities, or if you'd like to be a drop-off location for the school supplies drive that I mentioned, you would reach out to M. Lugo, M like Mary, Lugo, at addressthehomeless.org.
And what a great way to reach out. Every business has their list of patients, customers, clients. If they just did that, you would add probably 300 to 500 more people onto the list that are aware of this, and I'm sure would want to help out if they knew it's available. And there might even be just those things sitting around their house, clothes or items in the garage that would be helpful to you, and they're just sitting there doing no one any good. Greta, we want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We'd like to remind our audience that you've been listening to Greta Guarton. She's the Executive Director of the Long Island Coalition for the Homeless. Thanks so much for all you're doing. On behalf of everybody, the veterans, we want to thank you very much. And would like to remind our audience that you're listening to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan. Tune in next week.
We like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.